Indiana is the worst. Indianapolis is different from the rest of the state. That's the worst one.
Of course
Oh,
it
yeah.
is.
Well, we have a new state to pick on.
Yeah.
Indiana.
Hello, my friends.
Thank you for joining us for the PEBCAK Podcast, a weekly information security show featuring some all-around good people. It is week 28 of 2023, and I still have all 10 of my fingers. With me, I have my co-host Duke Silver, who almost lost an appendage setting off fireworks this past week.
You know, how dare you cast these aspersions? We both know aerial-borne fireworks are illegal in Arizona, and I would never set those off.
So if you launch it from your drone and drop it, is that still aerial borne or is that aerial dropped? Does that matter?
That's a great question. We'll try it out tonight. I'll let
There
you know
you
what
go.
happens.
There you go.
And Glenn just found a loophole.
Yeah.
And speaking of Glenn, we also have Glenn Medina showing off the warm temperature in his pool.
It's been a nice anywhere between 86 and 91 degrees in the pool backyard this week. So it's been pretty hot. I think
Bathwater, dude.
when I got home the other day, it was like 112 and the pool was like 91, 92 degrees. But it was great. When the sun came down, I was in the pool till about 12 o'clock at night and the pool was still hovering at about 89 degrees. So it was really nice.
Ooh, my little Asian raisin. Look
That's
at you.
right.
All pruned up.
Speaking of fireworks, though, oh my gosh, for a state that's not supposed to have fireworks, or for my city anyway, that wasn't supposed to have fireworks, it was going off like there was no tomorrow. I felt like I was in a war zone. So,
Like the 4th of July.
yeah. And we took the dogs to the local Petco here to get groomed, and a bunch of owners were talking to us, and they were like a little concerned for their animals or their pets, saying that every year people pop off fireworks and they get crazy. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. My dog sleeps through the night. Like they have no problems. So
My dogs are miserable.
out there?
My dogs
Yeah.
are miserable about it. Yeah, I have 2 Yorkshire Terriers, and they shake, and we have thunder vests for them, and it's
Yeah.
awful. Yeah.
They still don't like it, huh?
No, they hate it.
Yeah. Maybe because I play loud music in my house with lots of booming noise, and you're just acclimated to it now.
Just used to it. Used to love it.
Just pop off a shotgun every now and then in my backyard. They're used to it.
It's
no big
pure
deal.
heavy metal all the time at your house, right?
That's right.
When's the last time you had a desk pop, Glenn?
A desk pop?
Oh, you don't know what a desk pop is?
No, what the hell is a desk pop?
Get your gun. Get your gun real quick. And then what you do is you just fire it
I-
into the air.
I may or may not have a gun in California, so I don't know what you're talking about, sir.
Everyone does that, right, Sam? You've done the desk pop
Do
too,
a
right?
desk pop.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
desk pop?
Yeah, desk pop. What the hell, man?
All right.
Oh, that's right. We have a guest.
Our guest this week is Sam Curry. Sam is a vice president and CISO here at Zscaler and is the first adjunct professor we've had on the show.
Ooh, the first, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for
Sam,
having me, guys. It's
Would you
good
like
to
to
be here.
introduce yourself?
I think you just did. No, I've been looking forward to being on and looking forward to a conversation. I guess I've been in cyber for longer than we've called it that, and hopefully we'll have a great chat.
Adjunct professor.
Yeah, what's up?
So this is crazy.
Oh,
Where
you
do
want to know what I
teach?
actually teach? Okay.
Yeah,
so I teach,
exactly.
So I do an online course through Harvard, but I actually teach active courses at Wentworth Institute of Technology. That is a cyber terrorism course, and I also teach just cyber at the master's level for Nichols College here in Massachusetts. I live in Massachusetts, by the way.
Yeah, you know what I do with my free time? I in the bathroom, I put the toilet seat lid down, and I took like a roll of toilet paper, like the long ones, and I put it on there. It looks like a cigarette, and then 2 more toilet paper rolls, and like kind of squish them down to make it look like eyes. And I told my wife that the toilet was smoking. So that's what
Dude, that
you go over
works.
here and educate people, and I
Actually,
just make toilet jokes.
I think, Brian, I sent you some of my courses a few months ago. They were like...
You did.
Yeah. But I take the money from that and I invest it back into cyber programs for students in the state to help close the gap, and certainly students who can't afford to go to college, that kind of thing. So there's a scholarship at UMass for that.
Oh, shoot, we have an all-around new good guy, guys.
That's right. That's it.
It's all to cover up for the dark side. That's what it's for.
Setting the bar for the all-around good guy right there.
Yeah. Dang. and 3 languages and 17 patents. What else you got up your sleeves?
That's it, man. I'm played out. But yeah, I've been having fun at this, and I plan to keep doing that.
So I gotta ask, what do you do on your free time? What does Sam do on his free time?
Well, I have 2 kids, and I like to hang out with my friends. I like to I boat, so I like to go out. Here in Massachusetts, I live maybe 20 minutes from the Atlantic Ocean, so I go out whenever I can. It can be quite rough out in the Atlantic, and I really like board gaming. I like wargaming, those sorts of things. So I do that with my friends, especially in the winter.
You ever heard that joke? The 2 best days of owning a boat.
The day you buy it, the day you sell it. Is that the
yeah?
Well, so actually, when I got it, my dad said it would be a hole in the water I'd pour money into, but it wasn't. It was relatively inexpensive. Maybe the most expensive thing was the mooring fees, and then I actually, when I got rid of it, I sold it to a boat club, and they gave me 4 years of membership, which meant I could take boats out of any marina in Massachusetts just by booking it or calling them up and seeing if it was free and just pay the gas.
Nice.
So it was really cool, yeah.
So, that's the way to do it.
I don't even want to share this with you guys. That is a super cool little benefit you got from selling that boat, but you can speak 3 languages, and there was one word you've used today a couple of times that I no matter how hard I try, I cannot say it.
What is it?
It's the state that you live in.
Massachusetts.
I can't say it. I can't say it.
Did you say Massachusetts? Some people do that. They put a T in.
So anytime I'm beefing with the kids, my youngest daughter will be like, "Hey, Dad, why don't you say that word?" And I'm like, "Massachusetts." And everyone laughs at me, and I'm like, whatever. And I try my butt off to figure out how to say the dang thing, but it just won't roll off the tongue for some reason. I don't get
Drunk
it. Drunk
Deech is the best Deech.
That's sober Deech. Maybe I'll try it drunk.
Yeah, you just gotta break it in parts, but just say Mass. I don't think anybody.
Yeah, Boston Mass. That's why I always.
Boston
Mass.
Mass.
My grandma's from Boston Mass. She's over from Wayland, and
Yeah.
then They just don't ask me to say the whole word. It's
don't do that.
cluster F.
Exactly.
Hyundai.
Hi.
Oh, God.
Hyundai, you idiot.
Combined, we have decades of information security experience. They're here not just to educate, but to entertain. Got 4 awesome stories for this week, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This week, we're going to talk about how to keep your mobile device safe, China evading export controls. For our third topic, Android versus iPhone, and close with 4th of July talk. For our first topic, the Prime Minister of Australia is offering up some good cybersecurity advice, but here on the show, we like to take things a step further. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said, quote, "We all have a responsibility. Simple things. Turn off your phone every night for 5 minutes. For people watching this, do that every 24 hours. Do it while you're brushing your teeth or whatever you're doing." Now, that's actually really good advice because a lot of mobile phone malware, especially for iOS, is RAM resident, which means it will not survive if the phone is ever powered off. Apple's iOS operating system starts with a secure anchor of trust in the secure enclave, which means it can only ever boot into a clean version of the operating system. A lot of the ankle biter or bottom feeder spyware often used by abusers in abusive relationships to spy on their partners requires physical possession of the phone, and spyware like FlexiSpy will not survive through a reboot. So, good advice. Reboot your phone every so often.
Does anyone else think Prime Minister and you think Cub Scout leader?
I grew up with the Prime Minister, right? I grew up in Canada, so I don't. But
okay.
So I was a Boy Scout, but here in the U.S. you have Eagle Scouts. Every time I say this, people will laugh in the U.S., but in Canada it's not an Eagle Scout; it is a Queen Scout. People here think, "Oh, that's a strange title, right?" I guess it'd be a King Scout now with King Charles, right? But so I don't think that, but certainly maybe you do, just from a connotative sense. But
I always think not royalty, right? So
there's a governor general, right? That's different. That's here in the U.S. we have legislative, we have the executive, and we have the judicial branches of government. But in Commonwealth countries, it doesn't work quite that way. They have a separation between government and state. and then there's a judicial branch of government. So the actual government is formed by the state, and it's different. We don't have that distinction here in our republic. But so there's a governor general, and that's equivalent to a monarch in a constitutional monarchy. And that's probably way too much that people want to know. But it's pretty. That's that piece of advice is not the only advice I think people need for mobile. But I'll tell you, most certainly nation state hackers, they can always crack a phone, but persistence is hard because those phones are constantly patched and they constantly drift, and much of it is memory resident. And so you can get on the phone, but staying on the phone is usually the challenge.
Agreed. And
yeah, typically it's like a border crossing. Like in order to cross the border, you have to hand over physical possession of your phone. Or to enter an embassy, you have to hand over physical possession of your phone, and that's typically where they can introduce some of this.
Yeah, well, I'll share a story from years ago at RSA, right? So we found that some tokens were being returned back in the day, and they had burn marks on them, and we couldn't figure out why. And when we looked into it, it turned out that as people were going into China, this is like 14 years ago, as you went into the country, you used to go through a scanner, and those were mechanical Turks for the most part. Yes, they might scan, but they would take your laptop bag, lower it, look through it, and if they found a secure ID token and you were someone of significance, they would zap it. They would intentionally damage it. Now, the point was when you got back to your hotel room, you'd call your support desk, and you'd be issued over the phone a temporary access password. And so now you've gone from MFA to single factor, right? And the password's a relatively easy thing to get. So it's not uncommon. Just that physical access to something like a phone or to a computer or to a token can spell disaster when you're traveling or when you're doing something like that.
Sneaky bastards.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But they're not the only ones, right? It's nation state games.
So how would they burn it? Would they just
zap it? You put enough shock through it, right? I mean, it had epoxy in it, which formed a pretty good capacitor or barrier. But several of them came back that way when they were returned. Many were never returned, right? People just throw them away. But that's not unusual.
Explains why my popcorn was always popped. I was bringing it as a snack. And
yeah, but it's a machine.
I get through customs.
That's how you know, right? That
it's microwaves.
You put a bag of popcorn bag through with your
X-ray.
X-ray.
It's not X-rays, it's microwaves, yeah.
Oh, microwaves, yeah.
Canary in the
microwaves
coal mine. If your popcorn's
they're
popped.
often used, by the way, for listening devices, right? Because you can turn objects into remote microphones, and you can use microwaves to carry the signal. So you can pop your popcorn sometimes when you're being surveilled on.
I could have sworn, Chris, that we had an episode where even the thought of rebooting phones, that there were still enough. There was a hack where they made it look like the phone was rebooting, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
In one of our episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's malware that will mimic the screen of a rebooting phone, and I think on that episode we said the only real way to know if it's rebooted is drain the battery all the way to 0,
and then some. Yeah.
And even then, and then some.
I think if you have a iPhone, like, you should practice not just like powering it off, because I think they do some stuff that's still resident upon that reboot, right? Because it comes up and some of the apps are still a little bit persistent and whatnot. So I think you should do like the whole like volume up, volume down, volume up, and power, and do that reset. I think that actually clears it out a little bit better.
I think I got to jiggle your toes too at the same time and do the okey pokey.
So you mentioned the trusted execution environment, right? So back in 2013, NIST put out a standard for how to do that. All phones are supposed to implement that. Even Android phones are supposed to implement that, right? It's not unique to iPhones, but be careful, because there's still a substantial double-digit % of iPhones that are jailbroken. In which case, that boot sequence isn't to be trusted.
Yeah, if you jailbreak or root your phone, then all bets are off.
Then
you're
luck.
already violating the hardware. Yeah,
I was like iOS 10, maybe iOS 7 was maybe the last time I jailbroke something. How about you guys?
Well, I think I was at
iOS
7.
Device.
Yeah, 7 or 8 was the last time.
Probably the same.
I've only done it in labs.
iPhone
and it was
4.
I think it was 6S. Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a pain. It was such a pain just to get it to convert, and then once you did, just trying to keep it stable was my issue.
Yeah. Every update would kill it, and you have to find a new way. And it's like tether. You'd have to have the tethered one where you plug in your computer and jail. But it wasn't worth the effort anymore, unless you really need it for hardcore research purposes.
I think that was back in the day when you had to actually physically tether your phone to port contacts over. Now, I don't think I've ever connected my phone to my laptop ever. Like,
It's all
it's
cloud.
all cloud based, which is nice.
Did I ever tell you guys about how I'm not going to describe how I got all of the attendance to AWS, but it was in an Excel spreadsheet, right? And so I was like, I just want to sort by everyone in Arizona and Nevada, and then I'm going to search for the title, right? And then I put the filter on there and I saved it, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to import this into my iOS phone, and then all of a sudden I'm like, why do I have 125,000 contacts? Like, the phone was hot, and then all of a sudden the computer's lighting up too, and I'm like, why is this thing like it's a Mac, right? It's like I can hear the fan on, and I'm going there, and it's like address book. This is just like consuming all the processors. So I lived with it for a while, actually up until like last year, and I finally got frustrated because every time I get a new phone or something like that, it would just spend its entire life trying to update the address book,
Transfer the contact.
and transfer the contact. So what I meant to do was do the filter, right? Copy off the context, put it as a CSV, but instead I saved the view in Excel, and then I just wasn't thinking. All the data was still there. So the 200 contacts I really wanted to import, no, I got all 125,000. And
Womp womp.
Yeah. So let's go back to this. Like, is it a good idea to reboot your phone every night? I mean, I don't put it in practice today. I don't think my phone's ever drained out of battery, or the only time I've ever rebooted is when I feel like I'm having issues or feel like there was an attack on my phone when I clicked on something that I shouldn't have.
It certainly can't help. It's hurt, rather. And what I've noticed is that sometimes there's bad memory management on phones. And so it's probably a good idea, especially if you're running a lot of things in background processes. It's probably a good idea anyway, just for efficiency. And if your battery's draining fast, you might just be running too much stuff, right? So it's probably a good idea to just go tabula rasa. I don't know about daily, but it certainly couldn't hurt.
Yeah, every so often I think it's good.
Yeah.
Does anyone here grab their daughter's, their child's, or their spouse's phone? They're like, this thing's so slow, and then you open up Safari and they have 512 tabs open.
But how about 2,000 tabs?
Oh man, I knew you were gonna one up me. All right,
Yeah.
good
Or
for
how
you.
about my wife that's got 74,000 unread emails? So it's like,
The inbox that boggles the mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta declare bankruptcy at that point. Just delete everything.
It's like, here, I signed you up for a new email is what I told her. So,
Have you ever received one of those emails? Someone actually declares email bankruptcy. I've received one, and you get one. It says, "I've declared email bankruptcy. If you've sent me anything before this date, please send me another email."
wow.
Yeah, I've
I got
not
one of those
gotten
about
that.
5 years ago.
I've read about it.
Yeah.
I've never gotten it. Yeah.
I'm gonna do that to Craigslist. Never mind.
So here's a few other things that Sophos suggests you do to protect your mobile device. We already mentioned this one. Patch to the latest software updates. Always patch. That closes the vulnerabilities. Uninstall apps you don't use. That severely reduces
that's a huge
your
one.
attack surface. Yeah. Log out of any apps you don't frequently use. Now that we have password managers, it's trivial to log back in, because when you're logged in, it collects way more data on you than when you're not logged in. Review the privacy settings. If an app doesn't need microphone and camera access, they should not have that. And then the last one goes without saying, set a passcode for your phone.
So in your notes here, you said that Burger King app doesn't need, the microphone or camera access, which I agree. But on Monday, I made the determination to stop and actually eat Burger King for lunch. And let me tell you, a Whopper with cheese is just that much better. So go for it.
So when you sometimes you're in a situation where it's like, do you want to use this app or not, right? And it's like in the old days with personal firewalls. They'd be like, such and such is trying to communicate. Do you want to allow this? And people have no basis on which to make that decision for the most part.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I just installed something, and it boils down to, do you really want to use that app? And if the answer is yes, you're going to allow it, right? And so then it boils down to, do you trust the brand? And so in the case of your Burger King example, it's like, well, is Burger King really going to be spying on me? Is probably what goes through people's minds. And they don't read the EULA, and they're not really reading the privacy statements. So these things, no matter what the advice, they don't do it. Probably the most sound advice from that Sophos list was uninstall stuff you don't use, and remove things you don't need. That's probably the best.
Do you guys have that setting that basically isolates apps, like basically puts them in the cloud if you don't use them very often?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
offload.
that. That's a trigger to me to just like, okay, if I haven't touched you and it has to load, you're getting uninstalled.
Yeah.
Yeah, yucky.
Yeah, and even for apps that you trust today, it doesn't mean you're going to trust it tomorrow. Like there have been documented cases of supply chain attacks with malicious updates getting pushed out. Like even if you trust Burger King, but Burger King outsourced this app to a third-party company, that third-party company gets breached, and then now they're pushing a malicious update to the Burger King app that's not gonna turn on your
Or they have an insider, or they get
Yeah.
acquired, or something in their supply chain gets compromised, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always
But
best.
What do you think
what?
is your most useless app right now on your phone? If you had to delete something.
Yeah.
If I
I have
had
to
to
look
delete
at my
something,
phone.
I
to
know,
tell
I'd
you
have to look at it.
that. I just
Social
cleaned it
media.
up, so
It's probably one of those social media
Facebook.
apps.
I stopped logging into Facebook like months ago. I could probably
Clubhouse,
delete that.
yeah.
I wouldn't miss
For
it.
me, it'd be Clubhouse. That was really cool, 3 years ago. But now with Twitter
What's
Spaces,
Clubhouse?
is that audio only app where
Penthouse Clubhouse?
you like they had famous people. They had Mark Zuckerberg, they had Elon Musk, and people just joined this. It was like a one-to-many chat voice audio only app, and then Twitter stole their idea and built into their app. It's called Twitter Spaces now, and Clubhouse is useless now.
You know what I don't like the fact that like if I buy tickets to any shows, they force me to install like Ticketmaster or like the MLB baseball game app, the baseball app. I'm like, I just want tickets. Can you just freaking send it to me by email? And I don't want to have to I don't have to install an app on my phone just for that.
Just delete it when you're done.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to say that my Taco Bell app, Chris, I know you still use yours all the time, but that one's got to go.
I just looked through and I just cleaned it up, so I really have nothing valuable to add there. But I did just remove a bunch of stuff.
Sam already purged.
Yeah, I purged.
I'll just go with like GarageBand or something, something standard that's on there.
I got rid of that as soon as I got the phone.
Yeah.
I should
You
get
guys
rid of.
have-
I should get rid of email. I should get rid of that. Yeah.
Do you guys have a most used app on your reports? What do you guys have that's your most used report app?
Kindle app for me.
Really?
Yeah.
It
yeah.
was Apollo until he killed it, so I don't know what it is now.
Mine's Spotify.
Mine's YouTube.
That actually lines up pretty well, but for all three of you, that lines up actually really well.
Why read when you could just watch? So then again, there goes my vocabulary. So yeah.
All right, for our second topic, the Wall Street Journal had a really interesting article on how Chinese companies are avoiding U.S. chip export sanctions by simply renting compute from the major cloud providers. The U.S. put an export control on cutting-edge chip technology to China, fearing they would use it for malicious or military purposes, and also to keep the U.S. ahead in the chips arms race. There's also the geopolitical concern that China will invade Taiwan. Cutting-edge chips like the NVIDIA A100 or the H100 are used for AI to train their models and handle the massive compute required for the new boom in AI. Instead of a Chinese company circumventing the export rules, just the rule today is you cannot export an A100 or an H100 to China. They're just simply renting these GPUs from US-based AWS and Azure clouds, which is perfectly legal. To combat this, a proposed rule in the US would require Amazon and Microsoft to seek permission from the US government before allowing Chinese-based companies access to these advanced chips in their respective cloud services. Is this going to open up another cat and mouse game where Chinese companies will set up US front companies in some type of trace buster situation?
You know what they say, if you can't beat them, rent it, apparently. I think that maybe this stupid rule came out, like, only thing that's going to happen is AWS and Azure are going to be like, yeah, we can do that. Just know they're going to have to pay us what we would have been making had they rented it from us in the first place.
Yeah.
So
The lost revenue.
So
Someone's going to make money from this.
I've got a kind of cynical perspective on this. They're gonna get it anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so putting export controls on it helps to monitor to some degree, but allowing this means that you can actually monitor spikes in CPU. It's pretty obvious when somebody is doing this sort of research, and if you're smart about it, then you can tap into the number one country doing AI research right now, and you can spy on it. I'm just putting it out there. So if I were that
Right now, the Great Firewall just shut down. They're like, "What the hell? They're onto us."
Yeah, exactly. Well, so if you look at the academic publications in AI, by far the majority of them are coming out, or at least the largest share in the world, are coming out of China. And we want to know as much as possible in the rest of the world what is happening and how that research is progressing. Not just what's published, but what's not published. So if there's an easy, cheap way to gain access to those without them having to import them illicitly, let them do it. And then figure out ways to keep track of it. Now, that's just me being cynical and putting that out hypothetically, of course, but yeah.
Well, we know that Amazon did that, right? Like they cut, or people would do like their own little Amazon stores, or not even that, to be hosting up whatever, and then Amazon would see popularity and then go in there and just buy up the company from a competitive standpoint. Like they see the back end, right? They can position very well. So I guess U.S. lawmakers, we look at it this way: like this is a great opportunity for us to spy. Us really is Amazon and Microsoft, not the U.S. government.
The big five.
Yeah. The big, exactly.
What's
Yeah,
the
but all the
verbiage?
intel on these companies.
Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Exactly.
Works.
Did we all forget about the VIG? You have to pay China. Like there's so many U.S. companies that are in China today, and they're sending stuff over there. And then when it arrives, you're like, we need 200 computers, right? And then it gets to the docking station, and only 100 arrive. Like I guarantee you, some of these A100 and H100s are just being swallowed up right there at their border or customs.
They fell off the boat.
Yeah.
This has been happening for years, long before computers. Things like quartz crystals for doing laser research in the 60s and 70s used to get waylaid in the mail, right, when it was being ordered, because on the way a country needed to do some research between origin and destination. The UK did that, for instance.
There was a story though. What was it?
Did it.
There was a story the other day. I thought I saw it on YouTube or something, where they like chip manufacturers were like having a rash of theft of chips being stolen, being sent to China, being put into computers, and then being sold back to the U.S. I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to do things there.
It's a racket.
Yeah, that's a real racket. I mean, like, how many chips are getting stolen? So apparently they were stealing them from these facilities, and then they beefed up the security there, and then they started stealing them direct off of trucks. But I was like, that is a lot of chips. Like, if you're thinking about it, like to the tunes of millions and millions and millions of dollars. But yeah, crazy.
It's like some Fast and Furious stuff. Are they hijacking like big rigs now with Honda Civics?
Well, there's a lot more redundancy now in the chip supply chain, and actually there's a surplus of GUIs as opposed to of GPUs rather than CPUs. So there's and we're not quite as at the mercy of Taiwan now. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They're still an allied country and everything else, but there are other places you can source it. Because if you remember, the Saudi Aramco hit took out 30,000 systems. And just the immediate demand to replace those systems absolutely took out the hard drive and chip market for like a month or two. It was impossible to find supply.
Yeah, they flew to Thailand and flew back with pallets of these hard drives. I remember that. And it's out by you, Brian. The chip foundries that are going to come online in the next couple of years are all out in Arizona.
They're right there, yeah.
Wow. My back door. But think about it, like, you think like Fast and the Furious, like some sort of sophisticated attack. I guarantee you this probably rolling up to a truck stop like, hey man, we know what you got on here. Why don't you just look the other way? We're going to do some stuff. Here's some money. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go in here and eat some eggs. I'll see you guys in a little bit. And then
we'll pay you in lead or gold. It's the old saying. Well, you can have lead or you can have gold.
Exactly.
Well, it is China. They could also mess with your social credit score. It says, you want to help the government, or do you want to not be able to buy bread next week?
You know how screwed I would be if I went to China? They're like, we already have a social score for you, Brian. I'm like, oh, damn it, I'm not leaving, am I?
you gotta work that off the rest of your life.
Let's just say after the RSA breach and after the OMB breach, I can't go there. Like, that's just not happening.
Yeah. Suffice to say. For our third topic, I want to get Sam's take on this topic as a CISO and a good security practitioner. Mobile security firm Zimperium, they have a 2023 global mobile threat report. They found the average number of unique mobile malware samples grew 51% in 2022, totaling an average of 77,000 unique malware samples found every month. According to Zimperium's research, the Android operating system has seen about 500 to 900 vulnerabilities disclosed per year that threat actors can target, whereas iOS only sees about 300 vulnerabilities in 5 of the last 8 years. We've talked about it on the show before. iOS is way more secure than even the most secure Android device, at least in our opinion. Should companies ban the use of Android phones if they actually care about security?
You sure? Hold on. You sure that's not just SEs in a lab just changing a couple of hashes or a couple files, and then that's what's doubling it, growing it to 51%?
Yeah, no. But so let's put that in perspective, right? So years ago, first of all, I did I tried to come up with a mathematical expression for what incents people using game theory to attack one platform or another. And there's a bunch of factors, but one of it's prevalence. And for all that iPhone is very, very popular with the security set, it's only about a quarter of the mobile market. So it is the largest single provider, but 70 to 75% in that range is Android. And so one of the things you do as a bad guy is you go, so who should I target, right? Part of it's how difficult is it to hack. Part of it is also how many people are using it, right? How many people know how to develop for it, and so on. So you would expect, just from the prevalence, you'd expect it to skew towards Android anyway. Now, those numbers, I double checked them, by the way, earlier. They're about right. It's about 1 vulnerability a day for iOS and 2 to 3 for Android. That's not a smoking gun. That doesn't say just shoot the other one. And actually, what's hidden in there is that Android has been improving. So it went from 860 in 2019 to like 550 in 2021. So it's been coming down, but it is still worse than iOS. So the reason I would say no, because that was quite a provocative question, is what we want is options and competition. I think if we have a homogeneous attack surface, it would incent them to put all their attack development resources on the dark side into going after it. And we would see a spike in vulnerabilities for iOS, and then what, right? Because then a single vulnerability would expose far, far more people. What we should instead do is encourage each of these companies that are supplying it to treat it as a priority and put pressure on them that way. And you can still get a secure Android device, or at least a more secure. I'm not gonna say it in absolute terms. So you can still be vulnerable on iOS. So my strong answer to that is no. But I'd love to hear what others think.
I think part of the closing of the vulnerabilities in Android was Google, in part of Google. So Google manages the operating system.
They took it seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to abide by Google's terms. You want to put this OS on your device, and one of their terms, I think only a year ago they put it out. They said if you use Android on your hardware, you have to supply security updates for X number of years after it's become end of life. Because with Android 6, I remember it was just, if you're on AT&T, you got the update. If you're on T-Mobile, you didn't get the update, even though it's physically the same phone. It was just this huge patchwork of, can I update? Can I not update? When can I update? Is it a month after AT&T? And now Google's the standard platform. Everybody has to offer security updates for X number of
Well, this is a bigger issue.
After.
This is bigger for IoT. I just published on this recently. It's, your typical IoT startup. Let's imagine they're going to be around for 3 or 4 years till they sell or go out of business, right? But their products could live for decades. And so there's no incentive for them to have any form of survivability for maintenance and for security updates. So that's a big issue, and it's going to get worse over time.
So 100%
agree.
How do you see that portraying out, though, right? I mean, because people are buying into these, they're buying IoT, the life expectancy, they know they're buying from a startup, but let's be real, that it's probably not going to last more than 5 years, but yet these devices are out there, and they continue to be out there, persist for 10 plus years. Right?
Well, there's ways to do it. However, they're not incented to. If you go back and look at catalytic converters for cars, originally the car seller was happy to sell the car without one, and the buyer was happy to buy one without one. And I hate regulations as much as anyone else. But until somebody said, hey, you need to be thinking about the air quality, nobody did. And so there could be a degree of that, which means that the private sector's got to get ahead of it a little bit. And business models can exist that say there can be an aftermarket ability for other companies to provide services with a royalty structure back to the startup. So, for instance, you could say, hey, my new camera's on the market, and there are 3 companies that will provide services and updates for a fee per year, and they get a chunk of it. So it's in their financial interest to do so, but it's more complex than how they would otherwise go to market. And most of them are not incented to do it right now. So there has to be some pressure to make that happen, or it simply won't.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I think Brian had a bunch of Blink cameras that went offline last year, right? And all that big investment that you had in that company has just kind of gone down the drain.
Yeah, it was Wink. It was the API went down.
Yeah.
And it took a dump, and it was like almost for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I pulled out. I'm done. We got to move on. But I think you're onto something here, Sam, with the whole Microsoft method. In a survey I made up for this podcast, Apple does own like 15-25% of the market share. So I think the bigger the prevalence really is the target, and the more devices you guys have out there, the better it is for the attackers. And then even if you do say you're going to support something for X amount of years, my wife's aunt came over the other day. She has this old Android phone that must be like 11 years old, right? Like, I don't even know how this thing even still works to this day. Like, we should be using it to stir soup, not make phone calls and use the internet. And there's no way anyone's ever going to, keep that thing up to date. And unfortunately for her, she's just like, I don't want to spend money on a phone. And they should be free. They're free to me. So why am I going to spend money?
And by the way, these old phones often get donated to poor people, to the developing world, to veterans. Mm-hmm. So and these people then do them for things, especially in places like Africa. They use it for microfinancing and for small businesses. And so they're particularly vulnerable when those are not being taken care of. And if you look at the OT market, if those companies go out of business, the hacks have happened because people were sitting in OT devices, even though their networks and systems were well taken care of. So that's supply chain vulnerability, and it's not going to be closed off unless this is addressed.
Yeah,
think about it, though. Go ahead.
No, please go.
All right, I'm going to hack an 11-year-old phone, right? Chances are this person doesn't have anything I want anyways. So at best, I'm going to use it for command and control to launch like a DDoS attack, I guess. I don't understand, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But that's part of that, though, right? I mean, you hack that kid's phone, and then you have access to the rest of the network, wherever they're at.
Well, you can go on Shodan, and you
can
go on Shodan and see just how many of these old operating systems and hardware are out there. And there's old stuff. In fact, one of our colleagues, Yaroslav Rosomakhov, was looking at Zscaler traffic, and he found that there were nearly 200 million transactions in a day that were from Windows 98. Like, think about that. That's ancient stuff.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. It's like...
That's
so the old stuff's
lab.
out there.
That's Chris's and Brian's lab, by the way.
That's my VM pumping
out. You got to discount that, yeah.
Junk traffic.
Yeah.
I caramba. What do you mean by microfinancing, by the way? I'm not.
So for a very small amount of money, small businesses in places in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, or in the developing world, generally in Southeast Asia, Latin America, they can, for instance, fund a business that does groceries or does repairs or transportation. For as little as a $50 loan or a $100 loan, they can get a business going, and they can, just with that kind of line of credit rotating, it's, when I say micro, it's very, very small amounts of money. And there's not-for-profits that make these micro loans at small interest rates. And a lot of it is empowered by mobile phones, right? So banks, companies like Société Générale in France do this. As a good example, because they have a whole subsidiary that does that. It happens in India as well. So this is how the bottom of the pyramid, as it's referred to, is going to be uplifted and be getting into the entrepreneurial game. And that's really exciting. But it also represents growing wealth and a potential target for these cyber criminals. They will move to where the ratio of easy to hack and yield over difficulty to hack and chance of getting caught has the greatest result. And the tragedy would be if, as we're helping the portion of our species that is in the greatest poverty, as they are lifting themselves out of that poverty, if cyber criminals and their massive enterprises went after them.
Yeah, see, especially in these developing world.
I don't think so. I'm thinking about this. You don't see me doing much about it yet, right? So I'm with you.
Yeah, in the developing world, they completely skipped over. They skipped over landline. They skipped over hardline internet. They just went to
straight to mobile.
Yeah, you could throw up a tower in the middle of a town and everyone gets internet. You don't have to roll out fiber to 300 households.
Or copper. I mean,
even in developed countries like Japan, I think there's like the most mobile devices. Everything's pretty much wireless over there, right? They're not laying cables anymore. So
and Japan at one point, most people had multiple phones. It was just such a cheap commodity to have.
Yeah. All right, for our last topic, and it'll be a rotating topic every week. This week, we're going to talk about any funny 4th of July stories you guys might have. Since we just wrapped up celebrating Independence Day here in the U.S., you guys might have some funny stories. I've lived in the Bay Area most of my life, so we weren't as able to go crazy with M1000s or bottle rockets out here, but I've definitely seen some crazy videos. Every so often, a house or store would explode randomly, and the root cause was almost always an illegal fireworks factory or a storage facility. A friend of mine, when I was in high school, was living on 19th Avenue here in San Francisco, which is one of the main roads that goes through the city. And one day when we were at school, the house next door just literally exploded, like it got lifted off its foundation. And they found out there was an illegal fireworks factory in the basement of that house. And that house got demolished, and he couldn't go back home for months, unfortunately.
We have a lot of those too, but they're just meth labs.
That's what I figured. I for certain areas of the country, we don't have a ton of meth labs here, but we do have a lot of illegal fireworks factories.
I have one. So a friend of mine out in Western Mass heard that I deep fry a turkey every year, right? I do it at Thanksgiving, and then I'll drag it out again at Christmas, and then I'm usually tired of dealing with the oil and stuff, so I don't do it again. But I mentioned it, and he went and bought one, and he did this week, he did it. And he did not do his research right, and he put a frozen.
Did he put it in frozen?
Put it in frozen. So
no.
I haven't seen the video of it. I'm told his house did not burn down, but he did create a turkey mortar, from what I understand. So there is a video floating around, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. But I won't mention his name because it would embarrass him a bit, I think. But
Just look for the flash of light.
Yeah, just this first turkey in space kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do anything exciting. I just watched, I think it was Independence Day Resurrection.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
How was that? Will Smith was in that one, wasn't he?
No, he was in the first Independence Day.
They wrote him out. I remember.
They wrote him out, yeah.
I think the joke was, because in Resurgence, it's a father-son thing, right? It's like the father, Jeff Goldblum, and his son, and then it was someone else and their son. And then they said after Will Smith had that terrible movie After Earth with his real-life son, they said, we're never putting Will Smith and his son in another movie again.
Yeah.
I just remember giving thanks to Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum for all their heroic activity back in 1996.
Bill Paxton. Don't forget.
Bill Paxton?
Saved us with the virus.
Yeah.
They did it. I don't really have any...
I expected you, of all people, to have hilarious,
like launching bottle
stories.
Rockets off of the truck while you're driving it on going four-wheeling someplace.
Dirt road, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Like this 4th of July, or just in general?
Any.
I guess you don't need a 4th of July to still celebrate, right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, we probably did some wild things growing up. Nothing that kind of sticks out. And yeah, this year was kind of mild because everything, like, it hasn't rained here in months, and so I feel like if I were to do anything, my luck would be set off,
start a forest fire,
or the whole neighborhood on fire. I will say that well, I guess 2 things happened. One of them was my son's friend was trying to light a firework off, but then he was pretending to smoke a cigarette, or it was a torch thing. And they went to go light it, and they ended up lighting his hair on fire. So that was one thing. But he was okay. And then the other one was last year, one of my buddies, they tried to go to bed early, doing the right thing. They're downstairs, whatever. And then all of a sudden, the fire alarms go off in the house, the smoke detectors, and someone launched one of the aerial-borne type of fireworks, went sideways, went through the wall of his house and into his kid's room, and then detonated in there. And luckily his son didn't have any loss of hearing or anything like that. So that it could have been really bad news, but And this dude he's scary looking, right? Like he's lucky he didn't find out who actually did that, because I think he would have killed him.
Wow.
Probably, yeah. Speaking of those videos, so I've seen those videos where they launch it and then it goes sideways and it goes into someone's apartment or a house or something.
Or under a car.
Yeah, so there's a video I sent you guys in the group chat. I sent it to Sam separately. So here in Oakland, someone threw what looked like an M1000, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's equivalent to like not a full stick of dynamite, but a half or a quarter stick of dynamite. So it's an explosive device. And they threw it into someone's pickup truck while the guy was inside, and for some reason, the guy closed the door instead of running away, and the explosion was big enough to blow the door open. So I don't know what happened to the guy, but he's probably at least deaf if he's still alive.
I think it blew the window out of the car too, right? The
Probably
driver's
did,
side
yeah.
window. Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
It looked pretty mild to me. I had systems growing up that would blow out windows all the time. So
Yeah. So I just remember being a little kid growing up in Hawaii. My brother and I, we didn't have a lot of money, but the neighbors would just pop off thousands upon thousands of fireworks, long chains that go up around the house. Right? It's Hawaii, so it's like a really big thing over there. And I remember my brother and I would always go search for firecrackers that never got lit off or had a really short fuse, and we'd always have like daisy chaining, the unspent gunpowder together, and then lighting the other one. Well, one time my brother was lighting it, and I was just staring at him, and we're just sitting next to each other, and he lights it. He couldn't get the lighter to go, and then he lit it, and the thing went like in his hand. I'm so glad my brother didn't lose a finger from that. But I sat there, I couldn't hear anything for the next 3 days. Because I was sitting next to him.
We used to do such stupid stuff. We had the WD-40 and lighter fights. Like, this is just dumb, right?
Yeah.
Like, we'd chase each other with flamethrowers. Yeah, in a garage too, so it's like a closed environment. Like,
yeah. I have a healthy
survival. Wow.
Yeah, I have a healthy respect for fireworks ever since that time.
But we used to do the empty it out, make a big pile, and
yeah, right. And then make a trail, see it light up.
You just gave me flashbacks.
Yeah, it's just crazy. How are we alive today? How are we alive? I just want to know.
It's funny you mentioned smoke detectors, but my son and my daughter both have a phobia of alarms because the failure rate for new alarms who moved into a new house is actually very high. It's like 20 to 30% have faulty parts. And the same is true of their friends. There's a very high degree of fear of alarms now. And they get alarm tests at school, and half the kids come home shaking. So my daughter actually has nightmares about alarms, and she wakes up and goes, she doesn't know if it was real or if she dreamt it. I don't know but it's the youngest generation now is just exposed to constant testing, alarms, testing, the shelter in place.
Made in China, faulty parts.
But they have the shelter in place drills and stuff, so it's extensive,
I just go into my kids' room and wake them up every single morning, just violently shake them. There's a murderer in the house. They're going to get us. And it's, let them know. Be ready.
I never wanted to get up. My dad used to come with like a glass of cold water and be like, you got to get up. Pour it over me. Save it for my shrink. I know.
Yeah. Well, we continue to get great comments about our dad joke of the week.
Oh, geez.
Dad joke of the week. This week, our guest Sam is up. High expectations, Sam.
Yeah. I know. I'll just jump into it. So, has anybody seen the band Dark Web? Have you guys seen it?
No.
It's funny because they're always on tour.
You got a good one.
There you go. That's a good one.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
Wow.
I have a second one if you want it.
We won both.
Yeah.
All right. So I tried to enter a new password. I tried to use the word beef stew, but it wasn't allowed. Do you know why?
Why?
It wasn't strong enough.
All right.
Wow.
There we go.
Not bad.
There you go.
You got the double
I brought
as a
two
dad
because
joke.
I was for sure. I thought
related.
one of these somebody's heard. So there you go.
Yeah. Cool.
Better than mine. That's all I know. Shoot.
All right, to wrap things up, rebooting your phone is a good idea, but you can also do more. China is renting instead of buying banned computer chips. iPhone for life. And don't play with fireworks. That's all I have for this week. You hope you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find us all on LinkedIn. Links will be in the description. Follow us on Instagram at PEBCAK Podcast. Thank you to all our listeners and subscribers who rated us 5 stars in the iTunes Store and Spotify and left us a review. We appreciate you all spreading the word to help grow the show. The best way to find us is to search for the PEBCAK Podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. For our host Brian H. and Glenn Medina, and our guest Sam Curry, I'm Chris Louie. Thanks for listening. See y'all next weekend. As always, have a nice day.
No relation to Steph Curry, right? So.
None at all. Thanks for having me, guys.
Identical.
Thanks for coming,
actually.
Sam. There you go.
Yeah, you need to come back and like just do a whole episode on just like stuff that makes me want to crap my pants.
Oops,
MFA token,
I cracked
wow.
my pants. Yeah, I got a bunch of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Have a nice day.